welcome. This is going to be a general overview about how to get started with making videos from home. My name is Tom Cruise, it really is. I'm the digital media manager with FSU Libraries. So, videos from home. Sí, pero why? Why would this matter? Why would you care to take up something like this? Well, for one, your voice matters. Making yourself seen and heard in class, at work, or beyond. The kinds of skills that we'll touch on today can be useful really everywhere. So whether it is presenting for an assignment, presenting your research, or presenting yourself professionally, being able to create your own video, making it look at least decent quality, are things that you will find personally empowering. And speaking of which, understanding how media messaging is created empowers you. So whether it's our entertainment or whether it's the news media that we consume, understanding how these things are packaged, how they come together. We all have kind of an idea, especially with discussions around things like fake news, how these things can be manipulated. But once you get an idea of how the proverbial sausage is made, that can help you become a more discerning consumer of information. And I did want to share a quick link that I think is a decent example. For those of you who've never seen RuPaul's Drag Race, it's a reality show first and a drag queen competition second. We're going to be covering a few things today. One's going to be pre-production, planning your project. Another will be the actual production, which is, considerations for when you're recording. And the third is going to focus on editing your project when everything comes together. What I'm hoping to show with this video is that knowing how to edit video or audio can be something that's very powerful. And it's good to understand the responsibility that can come with it. So why don't we watch this video real quick.
You have no idea in what order the things you say will be edited, and even people who were pretty nice can be edited to look extremely unlikable. Examples of this on Drag Race is what they did to contestant Max on season 7. After she took a break on stage when her corset was hurting, the producers asked her to sing a song to let them know that she was doing okay. They then edited the producers asking about it out, making it seem like she had a mental breakdown on stage and started singing for no reason. She ended up getting eliminated that night and was made to look negatively in a way that could potentially harm her career. You can't plan for that. They often even stitch together clips from different days altogether to create sort of Franken-sentences where queens supposedly talk about things they never actually mentioned in real life. Just look at this clip here where Shangela's clothing literally changes mid-sentence.
I love my girl Stacy, but I don't feel that she's completely confident in what she's saying, so I'm wondering, is she gonna be able to pull this off?
Nowadays, they make them all wear the same clothing for their confessionals, so you can't tell they're doing it, but you can easily look back to a lot of mid-episode costume changes in earlier seasons to see how the show crafts certain narratives.
So yeah, that's just one, we'll say relatively low stakes example of the kind of power that comes with being able to edit. So something I keep in mind, for instance, whenever I am working with people that I interview, for instance, that I plan on recording, I will sometimes go into the raw footage and I may edit snippets of what's being said, and I may move it around in order so that it tells a certain story or that, it communicates an idea. But what I often do, what I always do at this point, is I will share the edited footage with whomever it is I've decided to work with to make sure that they feel that they are being represented honestly and that their ideas, are in a way that they would feel comfortable sharing. But just one thing to keep in mind as not only you begin to make content for yourself, but if you work for others, being aware that there's an ethical consideration for what it is you put out in the world. And with that in mind, these are marketable skills anywhere, just like we mentioned, in class, at work, or beyond. You can imagine all kinds of opportunities to use video to represent yourself or your ideas. And with that, why don't we get started in earnest? So again, what we're covering today is planning, pre-production, execution, which is your production or your recording, and polish, editing your project and, bringing the whole product together. So with that, let's talk about pre-production. In essence, this is making a plan. You're starting with a script or an outline. I've created a template that you can use with your beginning video project. I'm going to go ahead and click on that link. You're welcome to click into this link, which should give you viewing access. Feel free to make your own copy, and from there, edit to your heart's content. But what I'm hoping to achieve with this is to create an accessible starting point for anyone who wants to get into creating their first video. And we start off with, what's the purpose? Is this something that is going to be instructional? Are you teaching someone to do something? Is it informative? Are you introducing them to a topic or enlightening their knowledge about one they may already be familiar with? Is it promotional? Are you hoping to call attention to an event, or in some cases a product, for instance? Is it entertainment? Are you just deciding to focus your talents toward bringing a little joy or thoughtfulness into the world? There's a space here to describe your topic. So kind of come up with the brief elevator pitch that is going to help inform the creation of this video moving forward. Again, the idea is that this is a document that at each stage of your video, you'll refer back to make sure that everything is on brand. And speaking of which, another thing to consider is your audience. So who is your audience? And good considerations therein are, what is their experience with the topic? So especially if you're doing something informative, consider, am I introducing someone to this topic for the very first time? Are they people who maybe don't have specialized knowledge, but they're already curious? This might be something that they've already dabbled in. Are they an enthusiast? Are you talking to folks who might have spent a lot of time with this subject matter? And somewhere between this and really expert, you might be talking to your fellow colleagues, which means that you don't necessarily need to spend as much time covering foundations of your topic. And instead, you can get right into the nitty gritty and really speak to other folks that will be familiar with the topic that you're discussing. And from here, we can help determine what's the tone appropriate for this audience or topic. So I have here, these suggestions, which would be professional, straightforward. This may be something that is within that light where you are purely trying to communicate information effectively, no distractions. Casual, approachable, where you might want to offer some space to be a bit more conversational. Perhaps it's not something that's very strictly scripted, but instead you have general talking points, and you allow yourself to become a bit more natural. And at the far end of that spectrum, we have what I've considered to call fast and loosey-goosey. So I very much have a style that will sometimes incorporate going off on tangents and returning to the topic at hand. Frankly, it's just the way that my mind works. I promise you, some of these bullet points on my presentation are more for me, just to make sure that I come back and remain relevant. But that can complement, say, one that's more entertainment focused, or if you're trying to take something that might be a bit more dry. If you're taking academic content that might start out very specialized, sometimes that balance between casual or the fast and loosey-goosey might be what you need to create something that is engaging for that new audience. And it's okay to take a step back and maybe humble ourselves in that. I certainly am very interested in my research, but I might need to kind of sell it to this new audience. And so when it comes to that, it'll dictate how you're going to write moving forward. And I would say, go ahead and start off at a place where you think, okay, maybe it's too much, but if anything, we'll pull it back. That's kind of my stylistic approach when it comes to when you're handling casual and the more fun and aloof approach. Next up is where this project will be published. So if you're going to be publishing on a place like YouTube, or really anything that uses the average widescreen format, this is something that's going to dictate, all right, what considerations am I making while I'm recording video? Namely, if you're using something like a mobile phone, for instance, to record your video, you've probably seen examples of vertical and horizontal video. So vertical video you might be used to seeing on certain social media apps like Instagram, for instance, whereas you're used to horizontal video, your average widescreen format, on things like your television or your laptop. where do you plan on your audience seeing your content? If it's going to be in a format like a laptop or television, then consider that while you're shooting your footage. Meanwhile, if you expect this to be on social media, for instance, that's when you can say, all right, we want to make sure we capture it horizontally. That way it'll be formatted properly and we don't have to do too much work when we get to the editing stage to make it work after the fact. We'll fix it in post is very much a refrain that will come into light, but hopefully when you're planning, that won't be nearly as much of a thing to lean on. So what media will be needed to create this project? This is going to determine what kind of equipment you may need, what kinds of locations you're going to consider. In short, we can expect, all right, I'm going to record video. This might include interviews. This might include establishing shots. An establishing shot being if you're trying to introduce, say, this is my academic program, the company I work at. You want to get a shot of the building outside so you can give us a sense of place before we sit down and talk to someone inside that building, for instance. B-roll, which is supporting footage. Sometimes just watching someone talk for long periods of time, isn't that becoming real right now, can be not quite as engaging. And so we want to show supporting footage to help illustrate the ideas that we might be conveying. Recorded audio, which would include, for instance, voiceover. If you don't plan on showing your face, but you do want to capture your spoken voice, this could technically open up some opportunities that we'll talk about later when we get to actually demonstrating a few recording techniques. But good to know ahead of time so you can make a plan as far as, all right, we'll need this voiceover. We'll pick what stage is most appropriate to tackle that. Same for ambient sound. If you want to bring a little bit of atmosphere to certain scenes, and you can decide to be what's called a Foley artist and go point your cell phone at a babbling brook, perhaps. You'd be surprised at how powerful these tools are. Same goes for stock footage and audio. I haven't included them here, but I think I'll go back and include them in this document. There's a surprising amount of resources where you don't have to pay for what's called royalty-free media. Basically, this means that it is free for you to use, whether it be in video or podcast, for commercial purposes sometimes. These will often come with what are called Creative Commons licenses so that you won't get in trouble for using media that someone else created. And finally, this goes into what equipment will I need? So chances are you'll need a camera and a microphone. Well, believe it or not, your phone or your webcam, which usually includes both, may just be enough. And recording locations, so finding some place quiet. Again, having a plan for all these things ahead of time means that you can say, all right, Monday we'll start in this location to capture video. Tuesday I can go into my closet and put a blanket around myself so that I can get some clean voiceover. That's a real thing. And below all of that is this script template, which I hope is made accessible. And another thing I want to say is I do invite criticism if you feel this document is helpful. Great to know. If you think that there's some things that could use some clarity, by all means, reach out to me. This is an evolving document, and I only ever want it to be helpful for those that decide to use it. So this 3-column structure here, I think is a relatively good place to start off with scripting your video and putting the details from the previous planning into place. We have our scene column, which is a very general idea of what's being described in this scene. So in this case, I've modeled this after an instructional video, but obviously feel free to format it as needed. We have an introduction, we have a goals interview, we introduce our concepts. Doesn't that sound kind of familiar? In the audio column, we have what's more often than not being spoken. So in this case, this would be, for instance, voiceover. What are we hearing? What's being spoken? What ideas are being communicated during this scene? And in the video column, that is the footage or visuals that are accompanying the ideas that are being communicated. So you can kind of see how, all right, during my introduction, I know that I'm going to have some kind of a slide. Maybe it'll have a shot of myself so that I can introduce myself and humanize myself with an audience, and so on and so forth as it goes on. So again, you can make a copy of this document and feel free to fill it out with your content that you plan on producing into a nice fancy video. Let's return here. So that's an idea of pre-production, which, following the overview of that template, it's good to have clear goals in mind, and be prepared to use what you've got. It's okay to be ambitious and to have big ideas. It's good to start there. And then as we start to see, okay, but I don't have, a giant truck that's full of fancy lights, or I don't have a smoke machine, whatever it is, that's part of your ambitions. And so that brings me to say, be prepared to compromise. It's totally okay to not necessarily meet that original vision. And that's going to come into place even with, however detailed a plan that you have. So it's okay to be flexible as your project goes on. And by the time you're done planning, you can get into production, putting that plan to work. One good place to start is to practice. Become familiar with the tools that you have available to you. If you've just got your phone, guess what? You've got the best camera that you have. It's the one in your pocket. Even if it's just a webcam on your computer, learning how to work with it, learning its limitations can be very useful to you. Oh, see, look at that. What difference does a ring light make? It's kind of like that. For reference, this ring light, I think I mentioned earlier, but I actually got it for $45. And again, I'll link that beneath. I'm also using a desktop microphone. I'll go ahead and link that as well. But you don't necessarily need something so fancy to be able to communicate clearly. Now, again, this is kind of returning to knowing your limits. If you don't have fancy stuff, don't feel pressured to spend money on it. It's okay to use what you've got, because what's more important is that A, you appear prepared, and B, if you've put thought into your project, ultimately that is going to be communicated. People will be less concerned with exactly how you look or how you sound. As long as you have these few steps in mind, where I'm going to record, what I'm going to say, that already goes a long way. So I have linked here as well our recording at home tutorial. So this is one that I produced recently.
My name is Tom.
Oh, what a familiar face we have there. This is available on the FSU Library's YouTube page. And this is intended to go into greater detail about what it takes to record from home using just your mobile phone. It can also be applicable to, say, a webcam on your laptop or a tablet. And yeah, feel free to go and check that out for something that's a bit more in-depth on what you can do with minimum tools. And just like it says in the video title, it is all about recording decent video. No need to go for top-tier professional to make just that decent video. There's also some tips there about recording audio from home, including the aforementioned turning your closet into a vocal booth using, say, a blanket, for instance. And something I realized recently, I was listening to a podcast. Actually, no, it was an online animation, and they did some outtakes where one of the vocal talent said, sorry, my blanket fell off because my cat jumped on it. They were recording their lines, if you can imagine, kind of like sneaking comic book reading at night under a blanket. Yeah, totally valid. Feel free to place your phone and yourself under your blanket, record yourself, and yeah, be prepared to explore that. Again, it might seem wacky, but test. Practice, see what it sounds like between recording with, this is going to seem weird because of my tripod. When I'm recording video, what does it sound like when I'm talking directly to my phone? What does it sound like when I'm talking into the bottom of my phone? Or is it using the mic on the back? So I've noticed that during a Zoom meeting, for instance, if I'm using a phone, it's actually using the microphone. I don't know if you can see it here on the bottom. You'd expect it to use the one on the front. But these considerations and knowing what to expect out of your equipment alone is going to do so much to make things smoother for you. So next up is post-production. We won't be going into a great amount of detail, but I will show you a couple of starter points. Post-production is, in a way, also putting the plan to work, but included are some download links. So we have Openshot for video editing, Audacity for audio editing. You'll find that a lot of the same concepts we talk about here can also go toward making a podcast with just your phone or your computer. So what you're going to see, I'm going to bring Openshot into my shared screen here in just a moment. The materials that I'm using are from a previous workshop that I did for the grad school called the Masters in 4. So this is where we had grad students come in and present their thesis in 4 minutes or less. This used to be an in-person competition that they moved online, which means that a lot of people had to get into video making very quickly. I've linked to a page from the graduate school that has the previous workshop, as well as a link to a OneDrive folder where you can download the same assets, which would be the images and the video that I offered to the graduate students to follow along with while I covered how to edit them together in Openshot. Now, Openshot is very good for taking on relatively basic projects. Something to keep in mind is that anytime you introduce yourself to software that is creative in nature, it's going to be overwhelming at first, and that's totally okay. So I personally work with the Adobe Creative Suite, and the first time that I opened Adobe Premiere, I closed it immediately. And I did that a couple dozen times before I said, okay, now I'll dive into this and figure out how to do it. But Openshot, even though it can be said that it is simpler, it's okay for it to start out that way. But I'll show you that what we have here is the ability to bring in our different assets. So this is the images, the video, or the audio that you want to bring together and bring it into Openshot. So that's what we see here in this corner. We'll start with my video where for this, I'm literally explaining the rules of the Masters in 4 competition, which gives us an idea of what order the next 4 slides are going to go into. So that should be good to kind of match along with what I'm saying. After you've brought in your assets, typically what you're going to be doing, this is your project files panel. I'm going to take my video, drag it down to what's called the timeline. It is a line, it's got time. So what's shown here is that I've brought the video in, and now I can view it and play it back. My name is Tom Cruise. I'm the Digital Media Manager with FSU Libraries. In this short presentation, I'll be providing an overview of the video requirements in Florida State University's Masters in 4 virtual competition. After which I go on to do just that. So again, this is an open source software, and I'll show you what the website looks like and how you can get it onto your computer and get started. But you get a lot of the basic functionality that you would want. So if your presentation has a couple of slides, I have my own slides here where I can bring those to a second track. And the way that it works here is that it's a little bit like stacking layers. So this is an image from a PowerPoint presentation that I exported as an image file. Having brought it onto that track means that it'll sit on top. That's pretty much how these layers work, and so that's how you can go on to think about, all right, how do I start to create the visuals for my project? Alongside that functionality, you can also do things like what I've done is I've activated a feature called Transform, and so I'm going to make this small and put it in the corner. So this is what the Masters in 4 students had to do, and this is the basic functionality that I demonstrate in this other workshop that you can view. But it's a way of taking what could be, for instance, just voice over a PowerPoint presentation, and being able to be more present, being able to humanize yourself, link the ideas that you're communicating back to yourself. Again, a very simple example, but if you're interested in learning a little bit more about exactly how this works, I highly encourage you not only to come to the Openshot workshop, but we'll also be hosting one for another free software you can get called Open Broadcast software. This is a way for you to record your screen, say like a PowerPoint presentation, as well as a webcam together. And we can then go on to create a video presentation like this. So I can return there and we can look at a little bit more of how Openshot works. But for now, I'll go ahead and navigate to the website so you can get an idea of where all this is coming from. So this is the Openshot website, and handcrafted with heart emoji and 100% free and open source. That is accurate, I can confirm. And you'll notice here that it works with everything. So whether you're using an Apple, I was gonna say an Apple, a Mac, the same. So whether you're using Mac, Windows, Linux, or even if you have a Chromebook, they do have a version of Openshot for your devices. Question in chat is, would Openshot be the first place you think a new video maker should explore? As of right now, it is one of the most accessible options I've found. There are other options. If you do have a Mac, it doesn't hurt to say start off with iMovie since that's readily available. But again, it is only available on Mac. If you happen to be FSU staff or an instructor, I do believe that you actually have access to the Adobe Creative Suite for free. And while it might be a bit more complex in nature, I would strongly recommend exploring things like Adobe Premiere Rush or Adobe Premiere Pro, both of which, or actually much of the software in the Adobe Creative Suite comes with included tutorial projects that you can select once you open the program, and it'll actually give you a tour of the different functions and allow you to, poke around just enough. But yeah, Openshot I think is a good place to start off. You may come to realize that, okay, I can do very basic things, but maybe I want to get a bit more creative or do more complex sorts of functions. The other option I found to that end is an editing software called, I believe it's Caden Live. So this is very similar in nature. It is open source, but I believe that right now it doesn't actually run on Mac. So if you have a Windows computer, Caden Live is an option for you. I don't believe, okay, so I do have it downloaded, and I'll open it up now so that you can kind of see the difference between Openshot versus this is free software that I consider to be a bit more technical in nature. So while it's not quite as easy to navigate, what I found is that you do get more overall functionality and control over what you're creating. So this is the program Caden Live. You might notice that there's a bit more bits and bobs here, but with both Caden as well as Openshot, what's nice is that there's so much documentation online, or there's YouTube tutorials. So I don't have to be your primary source, even though I'll be offering some tips on how to do this in an interactive environment. But the internet, dare say YouTube, is your friend when it comes to starting off with this. And just start with a simple project in mind. When it comes to these sorts of things, learning how to combine video footage of yourself with some images from a slide deck or presentation is often a good testing ground. It's just simple enough to learn the functions that you need. One thing I like to tell people anytime they start off with especially a program like this, is just learn the 4 or 5 things that you need to know before trying to think that you need an encyclopedic understanding of something like this. So when it comes to, I'll bring back Openshot here. So when it comes to Openshot, the only things that I cover in the previous workshop is how do you get your files in here, which I can demonstrate that real quick. So we'll go to import files, going to my Masters in 4 sample project files. It's not as evident here, but typically what I would like to do is a bit of organization. So this is going over some spoilers for the upcoming workshop, but it's going to really be helpful for you. So I know that I have images that will be part of my project. These are all these PNGs, so I'll make that images folder. I know that I have raw footage. I tend to like to call that raw. I believe that is, yeah, these video files. And then I have all of the project files that belong to Openshot, which I feel, I would usually create a new folder for that, call it project, and then I could save it there so that this removes a bit of the clutter whenever I open up this project file. Maybe I just want to review some footage. Maybe I just want to look at some images. I don't have to be faced with all of this. So I'll go ahead, come into my raw footage. I can click open. And now that video clip that I wanted to bring in has appeared here. And again, as far as the function I need, here, I'll go ahead and remove these guys. I'll bring it down here. And the next thing that's very useful for me to know is how do I trim a clip? So for our purposes today, I want to actually get rid of this beginning slide that introduces me and go straight to the video. So what I'm doing is I'm manipulating what's called a playhead here. And no need to retain all of this so far, purely demonstration. So I know that this is where this point in time where my face starts and the first slide ends. So I'll grab this end of the clip here. And you'll notice that I'm not moving the entire clip over. What I'm doing is I'm bringing just the beginning over, and that is trimming it down so that instead of starting with the slide, the moment the clip starts.
My name is Tom Cruise. I'm the Digital Media Manager with FSU Libraries.
It's me. And as you can see, this is actually the completed edit from Openshot. What's nice about Openshot, again, is that you can work in all kinds of resolutions. So you can work on, lower resolution quality projects, or if you want to put something out in fancy Ultra HD, pardon me, that's also possible with this free software. There is one last tool that I will, I wouldn't say that I outright recommend it. But it is something that has been useful for certain applications, and this one is called Kapwing. I used to think it was called Kapwing, but it is in fact Kapwing. What Kapwing is it's basically a video editor entirely in the cloud. So even if you have just a mobile phone and you have no other device that you can use to edit, you can actually use Kapwing. And this was used for something very similar to Masters in 4. It was used for a competition called 3-Minute Thesis. And you could do very similar things where you're able to upload video and you're able to, say, put images on top of it. The reason I'm not as quick to recommend Kapwing is because it does have a free version and paid versions. While you're doing research about what tools might be appropriate for you, open source usually just means that you'll get every feature you can expect out of it. But if there's one that offer premium subscriptions, the major downfall I found with something like Kapwing is that you have 48 hours to edit your project and export it as a viewable video file. But after that, you're locked out. You can't go back and make any other changes that you might have seen before. You'll have to start again fresh. So if you're making I believe it's a 3-minute video or shorter, you have very small video files. It sounds like a Mission Impossible mission, says Emily in chat. That is very true and very on brand for someone named Tom Cruise who's giving you all this information. But yes, so I guess that would be on brand for me. If you like to live dangerously during your video projects, then by all means, kapwing it up. And one last thing that's relevant to the Masters in 4 workshop. So the page linked here does in fact include both the viewable workshop as well as the OneDrive folder that's also linked here with the sample project files. If you have a project idea in mind and want to reach out about how to really get started in earnest on making it happen, my email is right here. Again, I am Tom Cruise, really. It is tjcruise@fsu.edu. The services I offer are an FSU Libraries resource. They are free to you. And hopefully we can get started on you learning. Thank you all. Please have a wonderful rest of your day and take care.